Gooby was attending a basketball game with her friends after school. They were in 8th grade, so they were a bit rowdy. At the end of the game, Gooby's mom came to pick her up. She got up, grabbed her stuff, and gave her friends hugs goodbye. But as she was finishing, Gooby heard a raspy, irritated voice bellowing from behind her. "Hugging isn't allowed on school grounds," the teacher squawked at them. Her jaw dropped. As an answer to her comically exaggerated shocked facial expression, she said, "You should have read the handbook." This rule is still in force to this day, but no one cares and everyone hugs each other anyway.
When Pandora's friend was staying over one night, they decided to prank call a friend. He was really strange and funny, so they thought they would have a good laugh. So when they called him, he found them out almost immediately. They began to have a normal conversation, but a few minutes in he said,
"I bet I could guess everything about your room."
He guessed that her room was painted blue and brown. She had horse posters all over the walls, and the curtains were beige and white striped. It was all true. He then proceeded to name other small details. The phone was still in the middle of her bunk bed, that Pandora was wearing a large pajama shirt, her friend was sitting crisscross, and they were eating chips. All true again. They asked him how he knew, and all he said was,
"I can see you from behind a tree in your front yard."
Then he hung. Greg once drank a whole bottle of cherry whiskey because his friend dared him to do it. The next thing he remembered was lying next to his cat's bowl, completely naked. His friend told him that after drinking, he wanted to be a cat. So, Gergak stripped naked and ate most of his cat's food. He thought that the reason he didn't feel sick from eating all that cat food was because he was already hungover.
Spinal Palm and his girlfriend Princess Proton were supposed to be going on a double date with Dolan and Gooby. At the last minute, Dolan wasn't able to go, so the three of them went bowling. When Spinal Palm went to the counter to book a lane for 3 people, the man behind the counter decided to announce over the loudspeaker that Spinal Palm was on a date with 2 girls. Everyone in the bowling alley cheered and clapped, but the 3 of them facepalmed and had a very awkward bowling session.
Emoji likes to be competitive with a lot of stuff, but her weirdest is to see who can poop the most. One time, Emoji's friend was over, and in the middle of the night, they both had to go to the bathroom. So they had a contest to see who could poop the more between the 2 of them. Emoji won that competition every time.
Ramona was invited to a guy's house for dinner. The food he cooked was great and everything was going fine until they heard a knock on the door. Turns out it was his mum and dad. He then confessed to Ramona that he lived with his parents. Ramona thought that was no big deal, so she even accepted when he invited her over to stay the night. Ramona went to sleep in the guy's room, but when she woke up, she found herself outside on the sidewalk. She wasn't sure if it was all a joke or if the guy's parents just didn't like her, but she went home and never spoke to the guy again.
Talop was on the school playground when somebody yelled, "Who wants free money?" Talop fell for the trap and he ran over. On the ground was a pile of deer poop, but Talop was clueless as to what it actually was. They asked Talop to either step in it or pick it up for $10, so he went over and stomped in the pile. While he was doing it, Talop looked over and saw the kids running away. In disbelief, he ran after them and tackled one of the kids. Since that day, Talop has never trusted somebody with money.
Believe it or not, one of Pringle's cravings started when he was in the 3rd grade. Back then, his school served peanut butter and jelly cups with bread and a choice of something from the salad bar. So one day, he got pickles and jalapenos for his salad choice and a chocolate milk for a drink. He must have been completely out of it because somehow he managed to mix everything together. But it didn't matter since he loved it so much, and that became his favorite food of choice all throughout school.
James Shark's neighbor across the street used to have an awesome water slide going into his pool. The slide itself was about 10 feet high and was mounted to the pool deck, which was about 5 feet high. So James Shark and his neighbors could see each other pretty clearly when they were at the top of it. And every so often, he would see a kid climb up there, drop his pants, and just pee down the water slide into the pool in plain view of everybody. James Shark didn't swim at his neighbor's house again after seeing that.
When Tolop was 5 years old, his parents dragged him along to watch his sister perform a concert. Naturally, he was bored out of his mind. So, he started looking around at the people in the audience. The guy sitting next to him had a very noticeable birthmark. It was bright red and covered his whole ear and cheek. Tolop had never seen something like this, so, in the middle of a song, he shouted,
"Hey! What's wrong with your face?"
Everyone in the audience stared at him in shock, and Tolop got yelled at all the way home. Now that he's older, Tolop is friends with the man's daughter, so they run into each other from time to time. Every time Tolop sees him, he thinks about that awkward night.
When Ghost Toast was in 8th grade, he and his mum got some ice cream from Dairy Queen. Because it was a busy day, all the tables were taken, so they walked a few blocks down the road to an empty bench. Just as they sat down, an old homeless guy with a bottle wrapped up in a paper bag came up from behind them. He laughed and sat down next to Ghost Toast. The man looked at him, then his mum, then Ghost Toast again and said, "Well boy, you feeling the music yet?" He took a big gulp from the bottle, mumbled some incomprehensible gibberish and began to run down the street on all fours laughing and barking like a dog. Ghost Toast and his mum were so shocked that they didn't notice that their ice cream had melted.
When Melissa was 6 years old, she had to pee really bad. Since she was locked out of her house at the time, she decided to go pee under the tree. Melissa figured if boys can do it, so can girls. The only bad thing is that this busybody old lady that lives in every neighborhood happened to walk by just as Melissa dropped her panties. Just as the stream was about to start flowing, she heard screaming behind her,
Young lady, what are you doing? Little girls don't do that. Only boys pee outside.
So Melissa looked around in sheer terror while pulling up her panties, trying not to pee herself. Both out of need and out of fright, she then took off running. Trying to run from the lady was not like trying to run from a new age zombie. No matter how fast you run, she's still going to catch up to you. Melissa lived on the 2nd floor and knew that her balcony door was open, so she attempted to climb up the 1st-story fence and get her little happy butt into her apartment. Unfortunately, the little bitty was able to catch up with her before then, so Melissa tried to hide behind the fence, only to have her neighbor rat her out. So here was Melissa, 6 years old, having to pee like no tomorrow, and this little old lady is chewing her ass out like she just started World War III. Melissa is in her 30s now and is still afraid to pee outside. Legno once got paid to throw paint on people as they finished the race. The paint wasn't liquid, but powdered and bright green. It was also outside and was kind of windy, so whenever he threw the paint, it would backfire into his face. Even though he wore sunglasses and a mask, his contacts turned bright green, making him look like Shrek. The worst part was that he had to drive the 3 hours back home, covered head to toe in the dusty green paint.
While Mimi and her mother were cleaning the kitchen one day, their next door neighbour's daughter ran up to the window, yelling for Mimi's mother. When the mother answered, the girl said that she lost her first tooth, revealing the gap where her tooth once resided as she smiled. The girl said that the tooth fairy took it and gave her $20. Right at that moment, Mimi's father pulled into the driveway. Knowing that Mimi's father taught martial arts, the girl asked him if he could punch her in the mouth and knock her teeth out. She wanted him to do it so she could get more money from the tooth fairy. As a joke, Mimi's father told her that she would need to ask her dad, who was already out on the porch, face-palming. The girl ran to her father and asked, but of course he said no. At that moment, Mimi was dying of laughter. About an hour later, the girl's mother explained that she meant to give her daughter $1 or $2 instead of $20, but it was dark and she couldn't see what she was pulling out of her wallet.
When Nixium was in 8th grade, he was returning from lunch break, waiting for everyone to enter the classroom. He was too busy eating his instant noodles from a cup, didn't see that the teacher had rearranged the desks. He walked straight in, hit a desk, went flying all over into the ground, followed by the desk and all of the noodles. He laid there injured under the desk, covered in sticky noodles, while everyone laughed at him. When the teacher was rolling on the floor laughing, eventually, even the teacher was rolling on the floor laughing. Eventually, someone helped him up, and he was told to finish his lunch before smashing into desks from now on.
On the first day of the new school year, Emoji's high school arranged free Chick-fil-A lunches for all students in the auditorium. As they sat there listening to speeches, Emoji's friend came up with a funny dare. She told Emoji she would pay him to climb up on the stage and do a sexy dance with the Chick-fil-A cow mascot. Emoji was a terrified freshman, but he actually climbed up on stage and did it. The whole school was laughing and cheering, and lots of people filmed him. Luckily, Emoji didn't get in any trouble, and he was paid $13. $1 from every person in his row. People at school still talk about his sexy cow dance to this day.
One of the cringiest things that ever happened to me was I was in math class in high school, and I had this older guy as my teacher. Now, he was up at the board, and he was, showing how to do a problem, and he just stopped. Then he turned around and he just said, "Sorry guys, I just farted." And then he just went back to writing on the board as if nothing happened. It was so random and everybody just looked at each other going, ugh. It was so cringy. Like, even looking back on it, it's like, ugh, the hell was that guy thinking?
Gurgak went to a bar once to celebrate his birthday with friends. His friends were being very generous and shouted Gurgak lots and lots of shots and cocktails. After a while, Gurgak was so drunk, he eventually blacked out. The next thing he remembers, he was waking up in his bed the next day. He woke up to 37 angry texts from his friend Mikhailum. When he asked what's wrong, Mikhailum replied,
"Dude, you threw my dog out of a window yelling, 'Pikachu, I choose you.'"
The dog was unharmed, however, Gurgak isn't allowed to pet Mikhailum's dog anymore.
The spookiest place Pringle ever went was in the backwoods of Camelback, Pennsylvania. He was 8 when him and his family went to investigate an old site. As his dad distributed the soil and leaf litter, Pringle heard a sharp scream, "Get out!" And he saw a shadowy figure with a red aura on the second floor of the ransacked building. He asked his mother,
Who's that figure in the window?
She looked and then asked him,
"What figure? There's no one there!"
Even now, after 15 years and a better understanding of the world, Pringle doesn't know who or what the specter was.
When they were in high school, Spincess and her boyfriend, Tolop, went to a fancy restaurant. Throughout the night, he kept dropping hints of getting married. He said things like, "Yep, we're gonna live there," or "I promise to never come back to you as a dead person once I join the military." Spincess didn't pay much attention and just laughed along, thinking it was only a joke. During dinner, she bit down on something hard. Tolop smiled when he realized that Spincess had found the engagement ring, but she spit it out and held a hand to her mouth. He said, "I know, you're so shocked, aren't you?" Spincess replied, "No, I just broke my fucking tooth." Tolop got wide-eyed, and as Spincess leaned forward, Tolop came back and accidentally headbutted her on the nose. Despite everything that happened, Spincess still accepted Tolop's ring. They planned on getting married after high school, until she caught him cheating on her with 3 other girls. Yikes.
The advice Gurgak got was from his grandmother when he was 20. As a joke, he asked his grandmother,
"How do you put on a condom?"
She looked at him, laughed, and said,
Why? Your mom and dad didn't use one. On second thought, just slip it on your thing. We don't want another one of you running around. That would be hell.
When Melissa was 13, she really wanted to impress a boy she had had a crush on since she was 8. She knew that her crush, me, was really into spicy peppers. So one day at lunch, she got up on the table in front of the whole school and pulled out the spiciest pepper she could find from her dad's garden. She shoved it in her mouth, chewed it up, and swallowed while the rest of the kids cheered. She ended up buying 20 cartons of milk to put out the fireball in her mouth, and she had to go to the bathroom 5 times. Her crush was totally impressed though, and now they're totally dating.
In high school, Pringle dated a girl who loved horror movies. After he broke up with her, she called him about a week later, doing her best impression of Ghostface from Scream.
"Do you like scary movies?"
she asked. Pringle decided to play along and answered, yes. Still impersonating Ghostface, his ex asked,
"What's your favorite scary movie?"
Pringle answered, Scream. Then his ex screamed,
"I'm gonna gut you like a fish."
That was when Pringle noticed that his ex was standing outside, wearing a Ghostface costume and holding a knife. She ran towards his house, making Pringle run into the kitchen where he grabbed a knife. He yelled, "If you want a knife fight, you'll get one." She broke into his house and slashed him across the face just above the eye. Pringle ran into his room and called the police. His ex was arrested and sentenced to 3 years in prison. When she was released, the first thing she said to him was,
"Would you like to play a game?"
Pringle talked to her for a week until she disappeared. He never saw or heard from her again. Later, he learned that she did the exact same thing to 3 other people, killing the last one. Oh, wait till you hear about my girlfriend. It's nothing.
Spinal Palm had a dream where he was streaking down a road and then got caught by the police. He was then sent to a jail that looked like his preschool with all the preschool students playing on their Nintendo DS's. Then a fridge came out of nowhere and opened the door. All the kids, including the still naked Spinal Palm, got sucked into it and saw dancing Shreks everywhere. He had this dream in preschool and still has no idea what his brain was doing that night.
My family doesn't really do anything weird, except for one thing. It's not that strange, but all the men on my father's side of the family all have nicknames, and their nickname is the first letter of their first name and their middle name. So for example, my father, his nickname that everybody calls him is T.A. Now his father, his nickname is B.A. And if you're wondering what my nickname would be, it would be T.A. as well. So it's kind of weird. I like it.
When he was 10, Dolan was in bed playing Pokemon while his babysitter was downstairs. He had to pee, so he went to the bathroom. At the time, Dolan wasn't that smart or clean, so he peed a little bit on the toilet seat. 2 hours later, he went to bed. Later on, Dolan woke up because he needed to pee again. When he walked into the bathroom, he saw the babysitter licking the toilet seat. She just sat there, staring at him. After that, Dolan just ended up peeing in a cup in his room. He tried telling his parents, but they didn't believe him, until a couple of nights later when they caught the babysitter eating their cat's fur. After all that, she was fired. Robo was house sitting for her grandparents with a friend when they were 13. They attempted to cook a roast chicken in the oven. After a few tries to get the oven to start, they finally found the start button. Robo's friend hit the button and boom! The door smashed open and broke the glass. It also ruined the hinge. They cleaned it up and proceeded to cook raw chicken in the microwave, which gave them food poisoning as a result. Robo never asked to house sit again.
My dad and I had this weird game called Last Touch Wins, kind of like a never-ending game of tag. My mom would get super frustrated by this because sometimes my dad and I would chase each other around the house when we were really late to go somewhere. This would even continue in public, where my dad and I would cause a bit of a scene. Can you imagine myself and a grown man playing what looks like tag with two people in the middle of a shopping mall? Because that's basically what we did. Needless to say, I always won.
When she was in 6th grade, Froggy and her friends created a game where they would yank each other's hair out. Whoever yanked out the most hair got to pick the next activity. Whenever they played their game at school, the aides never tried to stop them, which surprised Froggy. Later that year, the aides ended up getting fired for an unknown reason. Not wanting to leave his kids home alone during the summer when he worked, Gergak's dad hired a babysitter. She didn't let Gergak or his sibling go outside or go downstairs when they kept their Wii. If they asked for anything such as food, toys, and coloring books, she would yell at them. The only thing their babysitter would do is sit on the couch and watch terrible TV drama while shoving cheese puffs in her face. When Gergak and his siblings told their dad about the babysitter, he immediately fired her.
Gergak and Tulip were once hiking through the woods in Grand Rapids, Michigan when they heard a snapping noise. They turned around but couldn't see anything suspicious, so they kept walking. Suddenly, Tulip screamed and Gergak turned around to see him being dragged by an invisible force through the woods. He ran after him and they ended up at an empty campsite. There were clothes laying everywhere and empty food containers. It was really creepy. Once Gergak caught up, they ran for their lives back to safety and never went walking down that trail again.
One day, 2 police officers came to Emoji's house and arrested him out of the blue. They told him he owed a car dealership $270,000 for breaking in and smashing all their windows. Emoji had no idea what they were talking about, so the cops showed him security footage of 2 people throwing rocks at cars and spray painting the name Emoji on the dealership walls. Yep, the world-class detectives believed Emoji committed the crime and was stupid enough to sign his own name. It turned out the people in the video were 2 troublemakers Emoji knew from a couple of years earlier. You see, back in the day, Emoji used to hang out with kids who were bad influences. They tried to get Emoji to rob a gas station with them, but he refused. The idiots went ahead and robbed the station without him and ended up getting caught. Of course, they blamed Emoji, and after spending 7 months in jail, they vowed to get back at him by framing him for this dealership crime. Emoji was held at the police station for 13 hours before the cops finally believed he was innocent and arrested the real culprits.
I remember my brother told me about one of his friends and what he said, which actually genuinely creeped me out here in this story. Apparently, his friend was like, I don't know, 6, 7, something like that, and he was sleeping, and his mum came in just to kind of check up on him, and he got up. When she checked the bed, he wasn't there. Then she noticed the kid was standing at the window just staring out into the backyard, and she's like, "You okay? Like, what's up?" He didn't say anything. He didn't move. He wasn't even blinking. He's just standing there. So she went closer to him and she's like, "What's wrong?" And then he looked at her. He turned around, he looked at her, and he said, "They're coming." And that was it. He went back to bed. He fell straight asleep. It was like he was sleepwalking. His mum nearly shit her pants. Like, who is they? Who is they?
When Dolan was 12, he had a huge crush on the new girl in class. She said she liked cookies with milk, so Dolan decided to surprise her by making her cookies and milk. As soon as she drank the milk, she started choking. She asked Dolan what kind of milk it was, and he said it was regular dairy milk. She called him an idiot and then passed out. Her best friend told Dolan that she was severely lactose intolerant. He didn't really know what that was, so he asked the teacher and was devastated to find out that he had made her sick. Dolan got a week of detention and had to clean up her vomit afterwards. He never got to speak to her again.
The worst teacher that Dolan ever had was when he was in junior high. His teacher wouldn't care if his class got a low score. His corrections on the test were wrong, and if Dolan or his classmates said that he made a mistake, his only reply was, "Do I give a fuck about you? No? Right." The really horrible thing about him was that after they finished their tests, he vandalized all of the test papers by doodling dicks and stuff. He was a pervert to Dolan's female classmates, and one time he gave Dolan detention after he finished a project and handed it in just because he didn't think it was good enough. Fortunately, one of his classmates caught him smoking weed, and he was arrested and fired. One time, Tolop's class went on a field trip to the snow. They had to take a hellish 12-hour bus ride, but it wasn't all bad because Tolop got to sit across from the hottest girl in school. They talked the whole way and, well, they really hit it off. Tolop really wanted to make her laugh, so he waited for her to take a sip from her drink bottle. While she was drinking, he reached across and squeezed her bottle, making water explode all over her face and clothes. But his crush didn't find this funny. Instead, she got really mad. Tolop apologized, but she refused to talk to him for the rest of the trip. He definitely left an impression on her, just not the kind he was hoping for.
Nixiam was at the supermarket late at night once when a pair of the loudest drunk people he had ever experienced walked in. The girl of the couple was walking from aisle to aisle, singing at the top of her lungs about cats taking shits, before singing racist chants to herself. Her boyfriend, who was also wasted, was trying to kiss everyone in the shop, including Nixiam. Fortunately, the security guard grabbed them and escorted them from the premises. Everyone in the shop just stared at each other, unsure of what just happened. Nixiam and Derek once went to Comic-Con, cosplaying as two of the characters from Undertale. Nixiam went as Sans, while Derek went as Papyrus. After a long day of buying merchandise, they needed to take a break, so they went to the rest area that was under the escalators. When they got there, Nixiam and Derek became very uncomfortable when they saw two drunk people having sex. What made it worse was that they were cosplaying as Mario and Luigi. Nixiam and Derek just walked away, scarred for life, and looked for a different place to relax.
When Shima was in 7th grade, she broke up with a guy because she had a crush on his brother. She never cared to meet his family or even ask, so she didn't know he was her ex's brother. She decided that the only way she was going to get him to notice her was by going back to her ex, just to get close to her crush. So Shima started to go to his house to hang out with her crush's brother. She would sneak in her crush's room and leave little notes and gifts without telling his brother what she was doing. She thought that would make her crush happy, but he got creeped out and told her some not so kind words. Looking back on it now, she thinks it was a creepy thing of her to do. The guy stopped being her crush and she broke up with his brother 8 weeks after it all happened. Now she has a new crush, her best friend's brother. Ooh, Shima, that's so quick.
When Alyssa first started college, she moved into a terrible share house. She lived in a dark, creepy basement and her room was a Harry Potter style cupboard under the stairs. The basement had a makeshift door with no lock, a window that wouldn't close, and no electrical sockets. What made it even worse was the landlady lived there too and would store her dirty bike in Melissa's room. Every morning Melissa would start her day by tripping over that damn bike. Then there was the time the landlady spent money that Melissa had left out for the gas and electricity bills on cigarettes. Because the bills never got paid, the power and hot water ended up going off while Melissa was in the middle of a shower. Even though it was her own fault, the horrible landlady actually blamed Melissa for this. As you can imagine, Melissa didn't stay there for long.
One time, Andy's English class was tasked with reading a book by the end of the week. By Friday, most of the class had read it, but one of Andy's classmates hadn't. When the teacher asked why she hadn't read it, the girl said, "I couldn't read it because a new favorite season of my favorite show just came out. Plus, my mom made me feed the cats, so between binging Netflix and feeding the cats, I had no time." The student got a big fat fail, but at least she's up to date with her shows.